Guys, it is the middle of September, almost hunting season. Actually, technically the hunting season opened today, Friday the 15th. And we got this RZR that we need to do a little bit of work on before we take it out bird hunting. Follow along as we take care of a few little maintenance tasks on it before we put it back into use. This is a 2009 RZR 800 LE, the limited edition, because it has the fancy paint job. That's all that means. That I've got a few accessories put on here. Some I've done, some came with it when I purchased it 4 or 5 years ago. And primarily what I use it for is hunting. Been a good, reliable machine. Not too many problems with it, and I've had a lot of fun. We do need to get a few little jobs out of the way today, though. In the back here, I have wheel spacers. We need to pull the wheels off, make sure that those are good and tight. We need to give a little squirt of grease into all the grease fittings, and fresh oil filter and oil. And I think I'm going to put a fresh air filter in it as well. Hopefully this wind isn't going to be too terrible for you guys. I don't know how it sounds in the camera. And we'll get these jobs out of the way. First thing we need to do, though, is take it for a little ride, put some heat in the engine so that we can pull the oil out easier. We don't need it in four-wheel drive. We're just going to be running around on the lawn, and high gear is probably good. Oops, that ditch is a little bigger than I thought. Well, we'll put it in 4 lows, see what it does. Haha, there we go. Avoiding burning myself on this hot exhaust, reach down here and feel the end of the engine, and it is nice and toasty warm, so the oil should come out of there fairly easily. I hope anyways. Rather than draining it out the bottom, I prefer to use this oil sucker and we'll bring it up through the dipstick tube. One problem of course we have is the dipstick is right behind the seat here. So I'll pop these 2 seats out, we'll take the cover off, and then I'll bring you guys back and we'll get this oil sucked out of here. A CVT, or clutch cover, and there's our dipstick. One of the problems that the 800 series has, and why they got rid of it, is the engine sits 90 degrees. Like the crankshaft rotation is 90 degrees to the tires, and so therefore you end up going from the output of the crank to the input of the transmission, through the transmission, and then out the back of the transmission and into a 90-degree gearbox. And when they redesigned the side-by-side, the RZR went up to the 900 engine, they turned the engine 90 degrees, and this actually lives under there now, and it's a much better design. They had a lot of problems with the pinion nut working loose on these. They have what they call the tight nut club, and I don't have a sticker installed, but I did the modification where you tear apart your rear end, get rid of the nylock nut that came from the factory, and replace it with a all metal lock nut, and put some green Loctite on it, which is a bearing sleeve retainer. It's the kind of Loctite that doesn't want to come off even with heat. Of course, I'm exaggerating there a little bit, but it's the supposedly about the best Loctite you can get. Anyways, let's pull the dipstick. And of course, we can't tell how much oil is in the engine right now because I was running it around. But that doesn't matter because we're just going to pull it out of there anyways. Let me see if I can set you guys up on a stand, and then we'll fire up the oil pump and clean this out. The way this works is we stick the straw down into the bottom of the crankcase. We don't want it to curl around in the bottom and come up out of the oil. We just want it sitting basically at the bottom. Now we give this a little bit of a pump. We don't have to pump constantly, we just have to go with some vacuum in the canister. And as you can see, the oil is coming out of the crankcase quite nicely. Well, that's sucking out the oil. Here are some little twigs and leaves and stuff that are packed in here. I'm getting ambitious enough and fire up a vacuum cleaner here in a little bit, but of course, there's not a whole lot of point in vacuuming everything up perfectly because we're just going to go and get it full of twigs and branches and stuff again. We don't want to push tomorrow. The nice thing about using the sucker instead of draining it out the bottom is that you don't end up with a whole bunch of oil laying in the belly pan. Because oil and dust tend to make a paste that isn't a whole lot of fun to deal with. According to the manual, the oil capacity of this thing is about 2 quarts. And it shouldn't take too long to suck that much oil out of this. And hopefully the camera mic is picking up over the wind all of that kind of burbling noise. That means we have sucked up all of the oil out of there. Of course, we didn't do that in real time at all. I will cut out the mooring segments when I wasn't talking to the camera. But yeah, probably about 5 minutes, maybe not even that long, to suck all the oil out of there. And now we don't have a mess in the belly pan. We do, however, need to get a rag, clean some stuff up here, and pour some fresh oil in this thing. So we don't want any crap to go down the tubes. Be careful, we'll wipe that off. Looks pretty good. With the dipstick wipe. I picked this up at my local Polaris dealer, and it's the kit for the RZR 6, 7, and 800, although the RZR's only an 800. They have a different kit for the 900 and 1000. Fresh filter, and a couple of bottles of PS4, which is Polaris's blend of 11 herbs and spices that they like to use in their side-by-side engines. Make sure that the foil doesn't end up going down the dipstick. I think we can safely just dump the first one in. Shouldn't be an issue. Before we dump the second one in, we'll change the oil filter, and then we will check and see where the oil level is. That way we don't overfill it. And it does show that we're at the add mark, but I don't know how true that is. That might just be residual oil that's in the dipstick tube. Consistently, we're right at the bottom. Anyways, it is time now to change the oil filter. So let's swing around the back of the machine. Hopefully the wind doesn't get you guys too bad. And I'll get you set up. We'll see what we got to do to change that. Well, this is going to be a little bit fun. This is the oil filter. And a little bit of crap packed in around it. It's not the end of the world. That is going to be fun to get on. Hopefully I got a filter wrench that'll go down that small that we can get on at some angle and spin that thing out of there. Unfortunately, there's not really room for you guys and me to be in there at the same time, so I think I'm going to shut the camera off, struggle with this a little bit, and then we can talk about putting a new filter on before we install it. I'll bring you guys back in a few minutes. I don't have a filter wrench handy, so we're going to make do with a pair of channel locks. Just got to get in here and the trick is to not spill that all over the ground, because that filter is half full of oil. And now I want to try and get some more of that grunge out that was in behind the oil filter with a grab a rag, piece of paper towel. We'll get that out of there, make sure there's nothing on the gasket, and then we'll put the new filter on. Got the worst of it cleaned out of there now. The critical thing we want to be careful of is there's a flat surface here that goes around. I'm running my finger around the outside of it, or running my finger around that flat surface, and that surface is what the gasket on the oil filter butts up against to seal. And I want to make sure that that is nice and clean around there, because best case it will make a leak, worst case you'll end up with sand inside your oil system downstream of the oil filter. That would not be good. Here's our oil filter, and some people like to pre-fill them, and normally I would do so as well, except this is mounting horizontally, so if we dump a bunch of oil in this, it's just going to pour out all over the ground. However, down by my knees here we have a grease gun. That is empty, but I do have a fresh tube of grease. Now obviously we'll have to fill the grease gun up before we grease all of the suspension, but what I wanted was a little bit of grease to go around the seal. Now some people just use oil, and I used to work for a mechanic. He said that he had seen oil cause puckering on these seals, and then you end up with it basically glued in place. Not a good situation. Whereas grease makes it so that the filter comes off easy again the next time you go to change it. So I don't know whether you guys can see anything in there or not. Wind that on, give it a good firm contact. Now we don't want to crank it on there with the channel locks. We just want to bring it in by hand to the point where we contact, and then we want to get it up a little bit more so that it is in there good. That is probably even a little bit over tightened, but at least it shouldn't leak. It's starting to rain here, guys. Just a little shower, so I'm gonna shut it down so the camera doesn't get too wet, and I'll bring you back when we're ready to continue with this project. It hardly even rained enough to wet the gravel, so not a big deal. The benefit to it is that I did manage to put the fresh tube of grease in the grease gun. Well, we've got a fully charged grease gun. Deal with all that, and It looks to me like we're down here. That's kind of the add mark. That's the full mark. So I'm going to say we dump in half of that next quart of oil. See where we're at. Fire it up and let the system refill that oil filter. A little over halfway full, but I think we're probably going to have to dump all of this in, but I'd rather work up to it so that we don't overfill anything. Hard to tell where exactly we are on the dipstick because the tube will be full of oil, but it looks like we're it's run, because I'm holding it like this, it's run down the stick a little bit, but it was about right here, which is probably just about perfect considering we've got to fill that oil filter. I'm going to go around the other side and we'll fire this up because I have to put my toe on the brake in order to get it to fire. We'll let it run for a little while, build some oil pressure, make sure everything's circulating the way it is. Give it a couple, shut it off, give it a couple seconds to run down into the block, and we'll see exactly where we are. Well, this doesn't show up really well because it's dark under here. This is the end of the air filter housing. A bunch of mud and stuff on it. Three kind of cam locks and then just a hinge. And there's our cover. This has a pre-filter on the outside, and as you can see, that's stopping most of the grunge that's in that. And we slide it off without wrecking it, because it has to get cleaned and reused. There is our air filter. It actually isn't in that bad a shape. There's our shiny new one. So, yeah, it's got some dirt on it, and that is the new one. Good time to change it. Let me go and hose this off a little bit, see if we can get it looking a little cleaner, and I'll bring you guys back when I'm ready to stuff this in. I don't know how well this shows up for you guys. Maybe in a little bit, but I can certainly see in there, and there's a bunch of dust and crud. Now the crankcase does vent in. I don't know whether you can see it up at the top here. There's a vent that comes in from the outside that has the crankcase fumes. Basically, it's your positive crankcase ventilation, so that any oil mist, blow by, that kind of thing that comes out of the crankcase just goes back into the intake. I think what I'm going to do is stuff a big water paper towel on the end there, and then we'll take my blower and blow all the dust out of there. Not absolutely perfect, but it's much better than it was. I think to get it perfectly clean, I'd have to pull the assembly out of there. Here's our cleaned pre-filter. You don't want to use compressed air on the foam because it will shred it. I used the blower that I just used to help clean out the this container. I'm going to pull our wad out of there so that it doesn't get trapped. And then this ring here gets put on the center tube. Air filtration is kind of a bit of a weak point with these 800 engines. So I put a little bit of grease on that, on the tip of that air filter. It helps seal and also help get it in place. Clip the lever clips back on here. And that's got our air filter changed. Unfortunately, I did make one little mistake when I was putting the air filter in. This foam circle is supposed to go on the end of the air filter just to hold some pressure in against the pickup tube. Right like that. Now I've had a few minutes for this oil to settle down. See if I can do this one-handed, or see if I can do this while I'm holding the camera. So we're just a little bit below the full mark, kind of 2/3 of the way up between those two dots. So I'll put a little more oil in it. And we are just a hair above full. That's probably a good spot for it to be. Lock that down. That is our air filter changed. That is a oil filter changed, and fresh oil in the crankcase. We're making some good progress here. Next item on the list is to squirt some grease into some grease fittings. A couple of grease fittings that get ignored on these machines. Down there in that universal joint is a grease fitting that greases the U-joint, but there's a grease fitting that's sticking straight out towards us on that slip shaft. That's the slip joint that is on the output of the transmission and the input to the drive shaft. When I bought this machine, the drive shaft was completely worn out. That whole assembly was just flopping in the breeze. Fortunately, the wear it was on the cast iron yoke and not on the machined output shaft of the transmission. So let me grab the grease gun and we'll see if we can squirt a little bit of grease into that. Fitting a little wipe so that we don't pack a bunch of crap down inside of it. Well, it didn't take very much. That was not a bad thing. Now then, to get that universal joint, I think we've got to push on the buggy a little bit. Making a mess, but it is forcing grease out of the U-joint, so I think we can safely say that we got some in there anyways. Right here is another grease fitting on the top rear control arm. There we go, that's working better. And we've got another grease fitting down here on the rear lower control arm. I'm going to grab a fresh piece of paper towel and wipe up the worst of that grease that I've squirted all over the place, and do the other side. You guys don't need to watch me repeating this, and when I'm ready to do the front, I'll bring you back. Well guys, we got our service done that I wanted to get completed on this machine, but I haven't had a chance to take these rear wheels off yet, and unfortunately it is continuing to rain out here, and I am running out of daylight quickly. This garage is absolutely jam full until I can get things organized post-move, so we got to work outside, and this isn't working for us. In the morning, I'm hoping that I'll have some decent weather, and I'll be able to take the 5 minutes to pop these wheels off. I don't know there's a problem, I just want to check them. But unfortunately, I got to get this video edited because I won't have time to do it tomorrow, and you guys want to see it on Sunday. Thanks a lot for stopping by, greatly appreciate it. Give me one of those thumb up things if you got this far in the video, and we'll catch you guys in the next mess.